Good morning to everybody. On behalf of Ingredia, Audrey Boulier and myself are very happy to share with you our Proferrin, an outstanding natural bioactive to develop immunity boosting product. This presentation will be followed by a question and answer session. So please feel free to use the box at the bottom left of your screen to chat and ask your question during the presentation, and we will answer to your question after the presentation. Here is the agenda of the webinar. First of all, we will briefly present what is bovine lactoferrin, and we will share after some data on the market. We will simply explain how works the immune system and how lactoferrin acts. And after, we will display the unicity of Proferrin and its scientific evidences of its efficacy on immunity. So, what is lactoferrin? Lactoferrin is one of milk proteins. If we have a look at the diagram on the right, we can see different components of milk. We have first the major proteins, such as micellar caseins or beta-lactoglobulin or alpha-lactalbumin. These proteins are content in milk in grams. We have also minor proteins, such as lactoferrin or lactoperoxidase. We can find these proteins in milligrams. For example, lactoferrin's content in cow's milk is around 100 to 150 milligrams per liter. And we also have components such as enzymes, for example, around picograms. So lactoferrin is a minor proteins. And what is interesting with this protein is that there is the ability to bind iron thanks to its two iron binding sites. And what is interesting also with lactoferrin is that it's a natural protein found also in human secretions such as tears, saliva, or human milk. You can see that in human milk, lactoferrin content is 20 times higher than in bovine milk. But there is a high similarities between the two proteins, around 60% of similarities. Why is lactoferrin so interesting in our matter? It's because lactoferrin provides health benefits on gut health and on the immune system. So now we will go deeply in our presentation and have some insight on the market data. I wanted to give you some insight on the population we can target with lactoferrin at every life stage. We want to improve the immunity of population with a poor immune system and poor immune health that can occur at every life stage. So the first population we are interested in are children and babies. Their immune system is immature and they have a lot of contacts also with disease. So it's important for them to ensure a healthy growth. And there were 2 billion in 2018. The second population we can target are the pregnant women. Why? Because most of the energy they have is used for the baby growth. So there is less energy for the cells renewal. Moreover, their usage of drug is very limited. So there are around 130 million births per year. That means 130 million pregnant women per year, all over the world. Finally, the last population we could target to improve the immune system is of course the senior, because we know that their immune system become less efficient. That's why they are more vulnerable to disease. There are around 1 billion in 2020, and this number will be double by 2050. They represent 13% of the population worldwide. Here are some diseases or major infections that affect people with poor immunity. the well-known cold. I just wanted to give you some insight to show the difference between adults and children. You can see here that adults may have 2 to 3 infections annually, when children can have 6 to 10 colds a year. So here we see clearly the difference of the immune system strength between adults and children. If we look now at gastroenteritis, there is 2 billion cases. There were 2 billion cases in 2015, and among these cases, 50% affect infants and babies. And if we look now at the seasonal flu, 3 to 5 million people worldwide are affected. That represents 5 to 15% of the population by seasonal flu. And of course, the more vulnerable people are at high risk to be affected by the seasonal flu. We talk about children, pregnant women, and elderly. What can affect now? What are the risk factors that affect the immune system and that lower the immune system? First of all, poor diet. Why? Because with a poor diet, you can lack of minerals and vitamins. The second risk, inactivity, which decrease the efficacy of the immune system, but also stress or lack of sleep. And as we said previously, aging also affects the immune system. What is interesting in this slide is that we see that consumers are more and more aware of prevention and the impact of prevention on their healthy lifestyle. According to Mintel, in a report they did in 2019 on immunity products, they said that consumers considered strong immunity very important for achieving a healthy lifestyle, and they are looking more and more for products that can protect their body against immunity concern. In a consumer survey in 20 countries among 20,000 consumers made by Euromonitor in 2019, they showed that 46% of consumers think that being in a good health means avoiding illness. That means consumers are aware that prevention is very important to stay in a good health. So here we can see some data on the dietary supplement market and specifically on the immunity products among the dietary supplement. So the immunity dietary supplement market reached $6.6 billion in 2019 with a quite interesting growth of 5.4% of CAGR among 2016 and 2019. And immunity represents 10% of share of the dietary supplement, the total dietary supplement market. It is the fourth segment of the dietary supplement market. And also, it's interesting to see the new product development and in dietary supplement and in immunity positioning. We see that from 2015 to 2019, there are a very steady increase of new product development among 7% per year. And this new product, for this new product development in immunity, 50% of them were launched in Europe and 24% in Asia. So we see that Europe is a huge market for development of new product positioning on booster for immunity. I put here some examples of dietary supplements with lactoferrin on the market. You have, for example, a spray for children from Sylvanos in Latvia with lactoferrin, and another product in capsules from My Health, also with lactoferrin, dedicated to children. You have two products, one with colostrum and lactoferrin in the US from Wonder, targeted adults, and another one, for example, from Bionops in Switzerland, only with lactoferrin.
Thank you, Aurore. So now we are looking to the immune system. How does our immune system works, and what is the action of bovine lactoferrin on it? Our body has a powerful army that protects it from various types of threats. This personal army is our immune system. Every day we encounter a huge number of bacteria, viruses, and other diseases. However, we don't fall ill every day, which is due to our immune system, an army of cells that is always roaming our body ready to ward off any attacks. The immune system is divided into two parts. As you can see on this slide, on the left part you have the innate immunity, and on the right part you have the adaptive immunity. The innate immunity is the quicker immune system, and the adaptive immunity is a slow response and is the second shield of our immunity in our body. The innate immunity, or non-specific immunity, is the body's first natural defense to any intruder. This system doesn't care what it is killing. Its primary goal is to prevent any intruder from entering the body, and if it does enter, then the immune system neutralizes this intruder. It doesn't differentiate between one pathogen to another. The cells involved in these first mechanisms is the mast cells. When they find something, they release a signal that brings cells like leukocytes or white blood cells, which are soldiers of our body cells' cellular army. You can see on the left circle a different name of cells. The ones that belong to the immune system are named phagocytes. In the phagocytes, you can find different types of cells, such as neutrophil. Neutrophil will patrol into your body or will stay in certain places. These cells will kill the infectious cells and then die. There are also the big bad wolf, or we call it the macrophage. The macrophage destroys pathogens by eating them. Instead of roaming freely in our blood, they are collated in certain places. These cells can consume about 100 pathogens before they die, but they can also detect our own cells who are infected, such as cancer cells, and kill them too. Beyond that, we also have what we call the natural killer cells. These type of cells are efficient to detect our own cells who are infected as well, like by a virus. If we want to have a look at the next cells of our innate system, it's the dendritic cells. They are found in places that come in contact with the outside environment, such as nose and lungs. They are the link between our innate and adaptive immunity. They eat pathogens and they carry information about it to our adaptive immune cells. This information is produced and shared in the form of antigens. Antigens are the traces that pathogens leave behind. They are molecules found on the surface of the pathogen that they can be detected by our adaptive immune system for recognition. The dendritic cells pass on the information to our lymphocyte T cells. So the lymphocyte T cells are located on the right of the circle and belong to the adaptive immunity. However, the dendritic cells can pass the information to our T cells, but the macrophage can also perform this function. Now there is also the adaptive or acquired immune system. This system is more efficient as it can differentiate between different types of pathogens. There is two main components, the lymphocyte T cells and the B lymphocytes. So you can see it on the right of the cycle. The T cells come into play when an infection has already occurred. Compared to the B cells, they join the fight when the pathogens have entered but haven't yet caused any disease. So this is a very important cells to take care of our body when we have an infection. The T cells perform two key tasks. The first one will be basically they will go into your body and call the cavalry, namely other white blood cells. And the other role is also to keep a memory, which will keep a record of the antigen for future disease. Furthermore, we have the B cells. They produce chemical called antibody, which fit on the antigen of the pathogen, much like how a lock and a key fit together. This antibody crawl around a pathogen and act like tags. They signal the macrophage to come and kill the marked pathogen, B cells, and they also produce memory cells when they encounter an antigen. The B and the T cells memory jointly maintain a record of all encountered infection and so strengthen and solidifies the body immune system to this infection. If we now look more on the action of the lactoferrin can act on innate immunity and also adaptive immunity. When a bacteria cross the first barrier of defense of the organism, which is the innate system, the adaptive system will be triggered. The bovine lactoferrin has an action on innate immunity. First, the lactoferrin will enhance the dendritic cells proliferation as the neutrophil. So you will have more immune cells to be ready in order of an infection. The lactoferrin also acts on what we call cytokines. So the cytokines are highlighted in red on this picture. There is different type of cytokines, the pro-inflammatory cytokines and the anti-inflammatory cytokines. The cytokines are molecules used by immune cells to communicate between them even with distance. They work like letters sent by mail. Only the immune cells with the right box letter will receive the information. So cytokines are a key element in order to our body to react to the infection because they will allow the body to react the right way in order to fight back. So when you have a supplementation with bovine lactoferrin, the bovine lactoferrin will decrease the pro-inflammatory cytokines and increase the anti-inflammatory cytokines. So this will lead to what we call an immunomodulatory properties. So you will have a better way to recover after an infection thanks to the bovine lactoferrins. If we look more on the adaptive immunity, the lactoferrin will also have an action on the proliferation on the T cells. So as I said before, the T cells are the immune cells able to destroy a virus and also to keep a memory of the infection. So thanks to lactoferrin, you will have a better action to fight back a pathogen like a bacteria or a virus inside your organisms. So now we are looking to the action of bovine lactoferrin and its action on viruses. Viruses are infectious particles with their own genetic heritage, DNA or RNA. They are unable to reproduce on their own. They can only replicate by invading living cells in animals, humans, plants, and even bacteria. Thanks to this infection, they use the machinery of the cells to reproduce. It's their only way to survive. As you can see on this slide, there are many different types of viruses with different forms. They are responsible for different symptoms as well. If we look at the different way to picture a virus, Like on this image, you can see that a lot of people represent the virus with different form, because virus contain different proteins at the surface and also have different action into the body. History is marked by big epidemics which have marked collective memories. As you can see on this picture, there is an history of the different viruses existing in the world, such as HIV, Spanish flu, or what we have today, the coronavirus, which is called COVID-19. And this virus is making the news today. So I would like just to explain the difference between the type of coronavirus. Today, there is different type of coronavirus that exist in the world. At the left of the table, you can see the 4 coronavirus responsible for the flu. So there is millions of cases in the world. There is the SRAS, which was discovered in 2002 in China. MERS, which was discovered in 2012 in Saudi Arabia. And the one we have today, which is the SRAS-nCoV-2, discovered in 2019 in China. The information I will explain after on bovine lactoferrin are action of lactoferrin on the coronavirus, but not the one of today, not the COVID 2019. So be careful and don't understand that bovine lactoferrin act on COVID 2019. For the moment, we have no information on the action of bovine lactoferrin on the coronavirus of today. So as you can see, there is different type of virus, and this virus could lead of different viral infection. It can target eyes, it can target lungs, it can target cardiovascular health and skin infection. So there is as many as symptoms exist, as many as viruses exist in the world. So if we want to have a look of what was done on bovine lactoferrin with in vitro conditions, the bovine lactoferrin was studied on, for example, the influenza virus, and they show that on in vitro condition we had an inhibition of the virus replication thanks to the bovine lactoferrin. We also have a study with in vitro condition on the herpes virus, and they demonstrated that lactoferrin can inhibit the viral infection and the virus replication. We also have some study with in vitro condition on the common cold, such as rhinoviruses or also adenovirus and rotavirus, and we show an inhibition of the cytopathic effect. So thanks to the bovine lactoferrin, the virus cannot enter into other cells. And there is also in vitro study on coronavirus, but as I said before, not the one we on the COVID 2019, but the other coronavirus, and they show an action on the inhibition of viral infection. So all of these in vitro studies show the effect of bovine lactoferrin on virus infection and can inhibit some way of the virus to enter into the cells. But you need to remember that in vitro conditions are here more to understand the mechanisms of action of bovine lactoferrin than to show the impact on health. For that, you need to perform in vivo studies, such as clinical studies on human, in order to know if the lactoferrin has an action on human. So if we have a look at the literature of bovine lactoferrin and its action on in vivo condition, you can see here it's an extraction of a scientific article. There is a lot of clinical study or a preclinical study with bovine lactoferrin. There is a clinical and preclinical study on the common cold, so for example, the flu. And as you can see on the different column, there is a different type of lactoferrin uses, the dose and the duration of the supplementation, the subject, the method, and the effect. So the first point to remember is that none of the clinical studies use the same dosage. So we can have 600 milligrams or 400 milligrams. There even is other clinical studies with lower dosage. And it's based on adults and healthy adults and not on adults with some disease like immunodeficiency or that stuff of disease. So the effect of lactoferrin was a reduction of the symptom and a reduction of the incidence also of the disease. If we look also to another virus, which is a big one, as Aurore said before, the gastroenteritis virus. The name of the virus is rotavirus or norovirus. And on this type of virus, the main clinical studies was performed on children because it's a huge epidemic for children. And as you can see also here, there is no consensus on the dosage of lactoferrin for the clinical study. But what is interesting is in the most of the clinical study, we saw a reduction of the incidence of the virus and also an amelioration of the severity of the symptom, which is very good. And the next one is the herpes. So there is also clinical study on herpes, which allow us to see that you can have a reduction as the incidence as well. If we look deeper in the action of lactoferrin, so I wanted to highlight the fact that the supplementation of bovine lactoferrin can reduce the incidence of gastroenteritis, for example. So here it's the action of bovine lactoferrin on children on the norovirus, and with 1 grams of bovine lactoferrin per day, there is a less severity of the symptom of the disease among the children between 12 to 18 months. If we look at the incidence of gastroenteritis among adults, so it is the same with the supplementation of lactoferrin. Here it was 100 milligrams per dairy product. So as you can see on the graph, they consume different quantity of dairy product per week. And we can see that there is a lower incidence of the virus when you consume at least 6 to 7 dairy products per week, which is 600 to 700 milligrams of lactoferrin per week. So there is good result today on the action of bovine lactoferrin on different type of viruses. So the lactoferrin is a good milk protein in order to boost your immune system and to fight back an infection. So as I said before, the in vitro studies allow us to think and to have a theoretical mechanisms of action. So the lactoferrin has different action on virus. In the early stage of infection, the antiviral effect of bovine lactoferrin is due to the fact that it prevents the entry of a virus into the cells by blocking the cellular receptor and also by binding to the virus particle. So thanks to that, the virus cannot infect another cells anymore. But when the virus manage to cross and to enter into the cells, the bovine lactoferrin can also act on the virus replication into the cell host through the increase of interferon cytokine. The interferon cytokine help the immune system to communicate together. So it activates different immune cells, the one as I explained you before, and it can kill the virus inside the cells. So now we are going to present you how bovine lactoferrin Proferrin from Ingredia and how it differentiates from the lactoferrin from the market.
I just wanted to give you some words about Ingredia. So Ingredia is a French dairy cooperative created in 1949 that develops innovative dairy ingredients for food and health and nutrition industries. So Ingredia is located in the north of France in a very dynamic dairy production area. We have more than 50 years of experience and expertise in dairy ingredients. In 2016, we had a turnover of more than 350 million euros, of which 60% was in export. At Ingredia, innovation is very important. Just one data, among the 460 employees of Ingredia, more than 10% works in research and development. And we have a production capacity of 600 million liters of milk with strong partnership in Switzerland and Australia.
There is different type of processes of obtention of bovine lactoferrin. Here you can see on this slide the different raw material you can use in order to obtain bovine lactoferrin. So you can start with fresh skim milk, with pasteurized skim milk, or with whey proteins from milk. You can after extract lactoferrin with cold temperature or with a temperature around 15 degrees, linked to the process of chromatography colon, which is the separation. Thanks to the chromatography colon, you can extract the lactoferrin from the different type of raw material. And after, you can have a step of filtration in order to remove some ions into the solution. And you need to also have a good microbiological status of your bovine lactoferrin. So for that, you use pasteurization or debacterization by filtration. And after, you can spray dry your lactoferrin or freeze dry it. So if we look at the critical step for obtaining lactoferrin, it's the step with heat treatment. So if we look at the raw material, if you use a pasteurized skim milk, you will have a denaturation of the bovine lactoferrin because you will have to heat your raw material and the bovine lactoferrin starts to denaturate from 50 degrees. It is the same with the whey proteins because before filtrated the milk, to obtain the whey protein, you need to perform an heat treatment as well. The pasteurization in order to remove any bacteria or spore inside your lactoferrin, it's not also a good step because you will again have an heat treatment of on your lactoferrin, which could denaturate your bovine lactoferrin. So at Ingredia, what we use to extract our bovine lactoferrin, we choose to have only the step where there is no denaturation of the bovine lactoferrin. So we use fresh skim milk in order to have a fresh bovine lactoferrin. We extract the bovine lactoferrin from the milk through a chromatography colon with cold temperature. we use the filtration step, and we use, in order to have a clean product, a debacterization by filtration. And the norm of our filtration is the one as you can have in the pharmaceutical industry. And at the end, we spray dry our lactoferrin, but with a very specific dryer, which allows us to control the temperature, and we stay under 50 degrees for the temperature in order not to denaturate the bovine lactoferrin. In order to be sure that we don't denaturate our bovine lactoferrin, we use an analytical method called FPLC. So the FPLC is different from the HPLC because it allows us to not denaturate the sample into the machine in order to be sure that what we obtain at the end is the product we inject at the start. So if we look at the graph on the left part, you can see that we have different products. The one in pink is prodiet lactoferrin called Proferrin, and the one is in blue, it's a denatured lactoferrin. We perform an heat treatment of 19 degrees during 5 minutes in order to denaturate our protein to see the difference on the FPLC. And as you can see, the two graphs are completely different. You have a very thin and big peak for our Proferrin in a peak color, and you have a small and big peak in the blue color for the denatured lactoferrin. So after each production, in order to be sure that Proferrin keeps its native structure, we perform this analysis before sending the batch to our customers. Why I mentioned the fact that you need to have a native bovine lactoferrin in order to have the bioactivity of the product. It's because there is some scientific article that say when the lactoferrin is denatured, you have no more the bioactivity of the lactoferrin, especially on the immune system. So here it's an extraction of a scientific article on lactoferrin. So it's on an in vitro condition. They compare a bovine lactoferrin, a native one, to a denatured lactoferrin after an heat treatment of 80 degrees during 5 minutes. And as you can see, I highlight in red the column with the native lactoferrin. You have a significantly difference of the production of the different cytokines from the dendritic cells with the native lactoferrin compared to the placebo. And when you compare to the denatured lactoferrin, you have no more the action. You can see there is no more star beside the number, so there is no difference between the denatured lactoferrin and the control. So the denatured lactoferrin lose its bioactivity on the immune system. So the bovine lactoferrin needs to be native to exercise its immune bioactivity. This is why at Ingredia we perform our own in vitro studies on immunity in order to be sure that Proferrin has a bioactivity on immune cells, because we know that we have the good process, we know that we don't have any denaturation of our product, but we wanted to be sure that we also have the bioactivity on the immune cells. So here is the first in vitro study we performed, which was on innate response. So, like I said before, the innate response is the first defense of the organisms for an infection. So we use cells from rats. You can see the different name. It was primary cells or cell lines. And what we measured was the TNF-alpha, which is a pro-inflammatory cytokine after an infection. And the inflammatory condition was induced by lipopolysaccharides, which mimics the bacterial infection. So as you can see here, the effect of Proferrin on the TNF-alpha secretion after an LPS infection, you can see that we reduce the TNF-alpha secretion with lactoferrin, and without lactoferrin, there is an increase of the TNF-alpha. This is the result on the cell line, and we have also the same result on the primary cells. And you can see we reduce the TNF-alpha secretion after an infection caused by LPS. So as I said before, and thanks to what we can have in the scientific literature, we show that bovine lactoferrin has an immunomodulatory properties. And with our in vitro study, we validated the fact that Proferrin reduces the pro-inflammatory marker and has an anti-inflammatory effect. As I said before, lactoferrin has an action also on the adaptive response. So the adaptive response is the second shield of our organism to react after an infection. And we use another in vitro study in order to show if our Proferrin has an action on immune health. And what we measure in this case was the proliferation of the T lymphocytes. So the T lymphocytes are the cells who can act on an infection, and especially can kill virus or kill infected cells. So as you can see here, after an induction of the infection by LPS, you have an enhancement of the proliferation of the lymphocytes, which was the same with the Proferrin. So we can see that with Proferrin, the lymphocyte proliferation increases, and Proferrin can activate your adaptive response and has an immunostimulator effect, because when you have more lymphocyte T to react to the infection, you can react faster.
To finish this presentation, we wanted to give you some key messages to take away. So first of all, you have seen bovine lactoferrin is an efficient product on the immune system. Bovine lactoferrin have an immunomodulatory properties and can boost immune system to fight against bacteria and virus. Proferrin has proven biological activities on immune cells, as Audrey showed you, and Proferrin is very unique, natural, with proven efficacy.
Thank you very much for listening to this webinar. So we will have now a question and answer session. Do not hesitate to use your Q&A box on the bottom left side. We already have a lot of questions. So if we cannot answer to all the questions during this session, of course, we will send an email to each question after this webinar during the week. So I will take the first question. Audrey, we have several questions on the minimum dosage of Proferrin. Could you answer to this, please?
Yes, we have a question especially on what is the dosage of Proferrin to claim immunity boosting effect. So what we advise is to take 250 milligrams per day to prevent any infection, so like a cure. If you are sick, we advise to take 500 milligrams per day. But just to remember, for Europe, there is no EFSA claim for lactoferrin on the immune system. So for the efficacy, you will need to put this dosage in your capsules, but for the claim on the packaging, you need to be sure that in Europe you submit the dossier to EFSA. Another question on the dosage of lactoferrin, it's also from Stephanie Drax, that is it safe to take 250 milligrams of lactoferrin all year? Yes, it is safe because it's a food and you can there is no toxicity from the lactoferrin, so you can consume the lactoferrin during all year at the dosage of 250 milligrams.
We also have a question regarding lactose intolerance.
Yes, so there is less than 0.01% of lactose inside lactoferrin, so you can definitely consume lactoferrin even if you are intolerant for lactose, because when you have an intolerance for lactose, you can eat at least 7 grams per day of lactose. So with lactoferrin, there is no issue for this type of intolerance.
So during this webinar, we talk a lot about the impact and how the action of the Proferrin regarding and lactoferrin regarding viruses, but we have also a question: does lactoferrin act against bacteria?
Yes, lactoferrin acts against bacteria. Bovine lactoferrin acts against bacteria. There is several scientific articles on the action of lactoferrin. Lactoferrin is bacteriostatic and also bactericide against bacteria.
Thank you. We have some questions.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
No, go on.
We have some questions regarding the market. Do we have a lot of demand since the COVID disease? Of course, for the last month, we had a big increase of the demand of Proferrin, particularly in the dietary supplement market. And we have also another question regarding the lactoferrin prices. What is important to know is that lactoferrin prices is a very volatile market. So according to the demand and the supply, prices can be up or down. There is, Audrey, there is a question regarding the dosage for pregnant women.
Yes, there is a question for pregnant women. So it is safe for pregnant women to consume lactoferrin. The recommended dosage is the same as for adults, so 250 milligrams per day. Most of the time, the products for lactoferrin, with lactoferrin for pregnant women, are also on anemia, because bovine lactoferrin also boosts the iron absorption and act on some hormones who can improve the absorption of iron. So it is a very good product to consume when you are pregnant.
There are also some questions about the minimum age to use Proferrin.
For Proferrin, the minimum age is 3 years old. It will depend on the process of your product. For infant, there is specific specification for the factory and all that stuff. So it will depend on what type of product you want to do with lactoferrin, if it's sachet or infant formula. There is also a question on the shelf life of lactoferrin. So the shelf life of Proferrin is 2 years.
Yes.
There is a lot of questions.
Yes. a lot of questions. It's very interesting. That means you enjoy to attend this webinar with a lot of questions. There is a question on the drying process we use.
Yes, there is a question from Martin. Which drying process we use? Temperature is also a big topic with spray drying. So yes, temperature it's a big issue for lactoferrin because we know that bovine lactoferrin denaturate from I will say 50, 56 degrees. So we use a specific fluid bed processing, and the powder inside the tower stay under 50 degrees Celsius.
There is also a question regarding the purity of the lactoferrin, of Proferrin.
Yes. The purity of our product, we have 95% of lactoferrin inside Proferrin.
Another question.
Do you have bioavailability study for Proferrin?
Sorry?
There is a question for eating process. Can it be formulated with any type of excipient? There is some study who show that if you use excipient, but more for the pH for the lactoferrin for eating process, for the moment we don't have any formula with excipient in order to not denaturate the lactoferrin. But we know that depending on the heat treatment you use, you will lose 30% to 40% of lactoferrin. So if you want to have the right dosage, you need to put more lactoferrin in order to be sure that you have enough bioactive lactoferrin inside your formula.
We also have a lot of technical questions for you, Audrey.
Yes. Do we have bioavailability study for Proferrin? So we do not have bioavailability study for Proferrin because we know that the milk protein are very well digested, and we know that lactoferrin could be digested without any hydrolysis inside the stomach to have an action after in the intestine. So there is no issue with the bioavailability of our protein.
We also have questions regarding Proferrin and yes.
No.
Proferrin and gut, and particularly gut health and gut microbiota.
Yes. So we know that lactoferrin have also some action on the epithelial cells, and also in the small intestine. We perform in vitro study in order to show that we improve the turnover of the epithelial cells. So if you improve your turnover, you will improve, of course, your gut health. And there is also regarding the inflammatory effect, because you can have some issue on your gut because of inflammation, and because the lactoferrin is an anti-inflammatory protein, you can have a better gut health if you have some inflammatory issue in your gut. There is a question on how many years did you work on the product to gather so much knowledge? Thank you, but I think a lot of knowledge are also in the literature. There is a lot of people who are working on bovine lactoferrin because it's a very interesting protein, and there is every 2 years the International Conference of Lactoferrin. which gather all the experts around the world. And we discuss only on lactoferrin. It's 1 week of conferences, so you can imagine the number of topic and study carry out with this protein.
We have also some questions regarding our own clinical study.
Yes, we don't have our own clinical study with Proferrin for the moment because there is a lot of literature on bovine lactoferrin which prove the health benefits. And this is why we focus more on in vitro study in order to be sure that we have the bioactivity in the health area, like immune system or gut health. There is a question on how you're developing new formulas in cooperation with your customers. Yes, we work a lot with our customer. We have one of my colleagues who is a specialist of the formula with our bioactive. So if you want to develop a new formula, we can help you and we can work together on this topic. There is another question of the half-life of Proferrin in our organism. Ruth Castro, can you maybe develop your question, because I'm not sure to understand what you mean. If it's the half-life of the product in our organism, actually it is very quick because it's a milk protein, so you will ingest it and digest it very fast and will go into your blood. But we didn't have a study for half-life because it is a protein, so it's very hard to follow it into the blood in order to measure it and to be sure of the shelf life of the lactoferrin into our organisms.
We have also some questions regarding applications, particularly in beverages and confectionery. Can we use Proferrin in beverages and confectionery?
Lactoferrin is not, it's a heat-sensitive protein, so if you use it in sachet and after you add water to rehydrate the solution, it is okay, but if you use a beverage with an heat treatment in order to pasteurize or with heat treatment, we need to maybe work on the formula with maybe some excipient who can protect the lactoferrin, but for the moment we don't have any data on that. For the confectionery, if you use some process without heat treatment, for example, chewing gum with compression, you can do a product with lactoferrin.
We also have a question regarding the use of Proferrin in a medical device in the vagina. I remember that we could find some products for vagina in Southeast Asia with lactoferrin.
Yes, the point is with the medical device, it's a very strict regulation, and you need to have the mechanisms of action of your product inside your vagina. So I know that, for example, for Cranmax, which is a cranberry for urinary issue, there cannot be a medical device because it's too invasive to go inside the vagina and observe what is the mechanisms of action, because you need to have a physical action and not a chemical action. There is a very specific regulation for medical device. So for the moment, I cannot answer you on this point for the medical device.
Audrey, we can take one more question after we will finish this webinar. If you want to take the last question. Yes.
So You ask if we can mix lactoferrin with vitamins or minerals. Yes, you can definitely mix lactoferrin with vitamins and minerals in order to have a claim in Europe or a synergy with your components.
So thank you very much, Audrey. So we thank you very much for attending this webinar. Thank you very much for all your questions. We have more than 85 questions, so of course we cannot answer to all the questions. Of course, we invite you to the one who want to receive the slide. It is possible to receive the slide. Send us an email and we will send you the slide. If you have more questions after this session, do not hesitate to ask your question by email, and we will answer to all the questions we didn't answer today, and we will receive in the following days. So if you want to be able to take a second look at this webinar, this presentation will be available for 3 months. So thank you very much to everybody, and we wish you a very pleasant day. Bye-bye.